All right. We're a little bit early, but that's because I'm going to try to get some food. We're out here in Miami for Consensus. Just finished up our event a little bit earlier this evening. Let a few people kind of log on here and see that I'm a little bit early before we get it going. I'll just probably ramble on about the event that we had, and then we'll get into the questions like we always do. Appreciate you guys taking time out of your Monday to come hang out with me, ask great questions, and participate on the lives. Like a lot of people, it's wild to talk to people in person. They say we don't miss Mondays and Wednesdays. You're on every week. I listen to it with my family or my mom or whoever it is. Just again, super blessed and grateful for all the people that take the time out of their schedule to come listen and continue to support the channel. So on that, I always forget to say it, but if you wouldn't mind, please like, subscribe, share. It does help the algorithm. But yeah, so out here in Miami for Consensus this week, big week. We have, I'm sure, plenty of announcements that are going to be made. We'll get into the macro, which I know you guys want. Did that a little bit. Actually, we weren't able to do that today in the mastermind because I was traveling. So this will be the first time that I talk about the macro and what's going on out there outside of the few tweets that I made today. So yeah, we'll just jump into that. And then, we'll touch on the event first. So the event was great. We co-hosted this with Canary Capital, Bitnomial, and 3iQ. For those that don't know, those other partners. Bitnomial was just acquired by Payward. Payward is Kraken, if you didn't know. So I'm sure that they're going to be launching their commodities trading here in the not too distant future over there on Kraken, which will be awesome to see. And then Canary Capital, many of you probably already know who they are. Steve McClure is a good friend of ours. Appreciate him again, kind of helping us put this together. We had, they do ETFs. So they were the first to market with a XRP ETF. They have a Doge ETF. They have an HBAR ETF, many other ETFs as well. And excited to see that they have a new CIO. I don't know if they've made that announcement or not, so I won't say his name. But that was pretty cool to get to meet them and their team. Uphold, showing up strong tonight. We had them on our panel there. Robin was a little late, so Brett filled in for him. Really enjoyed that. For those that are already subscribed to it, you don't have to do it, but we do have a Twitter Spaces with Uphold on the 8th, this Friday. If you guys want to come check that out, should be a really good time with me and Robin, going over what they're building there at Uphold and how we're working with them at Digital Ascension Group and how that works out and provides additional value to you guys if you have a corporation that you're managing your digital assets through. Separate to that, we had 3iQ. If you don't know who 3iQ is, they've launched a lot of the DATs that you see in other jurisdictions alongside other ETF products. Christina was there. We didn't have Pascal tonight because Christina spoke on a panel. She came from Algos, who is one of our sub-advisors on the funds that we manage. She's super well-known in the industry, travels all the time, goes to a bunch of conferences, does a fantastic job. So really excited to be a part of the event with them tonight. And again, couldn't have really asked for a better turnout. Yes, Jay Gill, we did start a little early. I know. I'm out here in Miami. It's already 9, almost 10 o'clock. So for you guys that are on the East Coast, I'm feeling it. I wanted to start a little bit early tonight so that I can finish a little early and maybe be able to actually get some food before I wrap it up and pass out because we got a full day tomorrow here at Consensus. So again, blessed and grateful to be, able to co-host with those guys. Lots of good panels tonight. Some of them I'm sure were recorded. We were just kind of Chatham House rules. So, in that circumstance, people can speak freely because they're not being recorded. I think some people did record our chat though. Also excited to highlight Kristen, who's new to our team, Chief of Strategy and Product. She is, seasoned veteran in the space, came from Goldman. And really good insights from working, really trying to build out what we're building here at Digital Ascension Group for the past 7 years in crypto. And she's intimately familiar with all the frictions and frustrations we've been able to navigate and build streamline systems and processes for. And I think that she's the right person to help us continue that mission, and really excited to have her on the team. Also had all of our new members here. So Lewis from Grayscale, super excited to have him on. We got Martha from Gemini, COO. Today's her first day. It's kind of like a tradition here at Digital Ascension Group that your first day, if you're a C-suite executive, is at an event, because we do so many of them. And then last but not least, we got Cynthia Jackson, who came from US Bank, who was their chief compliance officer, that's on board now too. So again, it couldn't be more ecstatic to have fantastic people on the team, and really excited about what we're going to be able to put together and bring to you guys in the near future. So on to the macro, because I know that's what you guys are here for. And again, we're going to hang out about an hour tonight. Probably going to wrap it at what would normally be 9:45 for me, so I can get downstairs and try to grab something to eat within the last 15 minutes that the restaurant's open. So on the macro side, crazy things going on. If you weren't paying attention today, if you've just been hunkered down working, we had some significant volatility in the bond market earlier this morning. Somebody is dumping a large amount of U.S. Treasuries on a regular basis, moving the yield. Some of it was from like 4.3 or 4.4 up to over 5% on the 2-year. 30 year was a little less volatile than that, but still pretty significant. Big moves in the bond market is not a good thing. When you're seeing jumps that are 5, 10, 15, 20% in a day, that means there's instability in the bond market and things are not going well. Also, some huge volatility in Japanese bonds today. So again, these are like canaries in the coal mine, alongside the private credit funds here in the U.S. shutting down. Spirit Airlines filing for bankruptcy after being blocked for the merger. Sad to see that. I think JetBlue is honoring some of their tickets. So if you did have a Spirit Airlines flight booked in the next week, I think JetBlue and some of the other large airlines are honoring those tickets for people, just to help those people out for one, and then also gain some customers on their side. I'm sure somebody will come along and pick them up out of bankruptcy, but all when I was flying out of DFW this morning, all of their planes were grounded. All bright yellow Spirit Airline planes were sitting there on the ground not doing anything. So wild to see. Last time airlines were in trouble, probably at this scale, was 2008, many of which were bailed out by the U.S. government, American Airlines. I've told that story about my dad, a couple different times. And then, Delta also, I don't know if they're having liquidity issues or what's going on, but they canceled like 130 something flights today. So, that's here just domestic in the U.S. We did have a bunch of back and forth last night in the Middle East, which was early this morning here, mid-morning here in the U.S. Iran has attacked some of their neighbors, and now UAE and a few others, setting gas plants on fire, attacking, infrastructure. The U.S. is saying that they're escorting people through the strait while missiles are being shot at their ships. Things seem to be escalating. I don't think that we're going to get the ceasefire or the peace treaty or any of that in the near future. And so, with that, oil substantially higher today. I think we're at like 120 on crude. Brent's up as well. Continue to add pressure to the Bank of Japan to have to raise interest rates. And they don't have a formal meeting here for monetary policy in May. Neither does the Fed. Their next two monetary policies are going to be, or the meetings are going to be in June. I don't think they can make it that far. I really do think that we're going to see some emergency meetings here in May around monetary policy, because they're going to have to act. And, with the OCC's oversight on stablecoins, they got a lot of red lines back and comments. It looks like they're going to be able to take those back and then put forth actual regulation for the banks in the near future on how to be able to issue stable coins, the yields that they're going to be able to provide. And with that, I think that's going to be the green light again, like I've talked about, for them to be able to unwind the reverse carry trade. Until we have, the ability to drive demand domestically for treasuries here in the U.S., it would be a very bad scenario. if we saw the reverse carry trade unwind and all of those treasuries, U.S. treasuries, rotate into Japanese bonds. Well, the people that are holding the U.S. treasuries there. Again, with the big yield spikes that we saw today for the Bank of Japan, like very unusual. And it wasn't like it was just a glitch like one time. It was like multiple situations where the yield was moved significantly. So I don't know who's dumping treasuries in order to be able to remain solvent or, get out of the bond market before there's a problem, but it seems like there's going to be a problem in the not too distant future. Michael Gayad, shout out to him. He's been, putting out great content around the reverse carry trade for a long time, along with myself. He actually put out a comic the other day that alludes to your hamster having a problem. If you follow him, you know what that means. But if you don't follow him, I would encourage you to do so. He has a great account over there on Twitter. A little raunchy, a little edgy sometimes, but again, very good information. So he sees it coming. Dario sees it coming, and many of the other large Twitter accounts that have been following the macro for a long time. They're on board with me that the reverse carry trade is going to unwind at scale, and it's going to be trillions of dollars, if not tens of trillions of dollars, in liquidity that gets sucked out of markets in a very short period of time. So all those things happening. Again, I expect other announcements here while we're at consensus. You had the DTCC come out today and say that they will be tokenizing the stock market in July this year with select partners. They named 50 plus partners that they're going to be using and partnering with to be able to facilitate the tokenization of the stock market. You do need instant settlement live before they tokenize the stock market. So the DTCC does back-end settlement between the clearinghouses and the brokers. I've talked about it for a long time that XRP would sit uniquely in that position to be able to provide liquidity for that settlement if it was a high enough price, because of the primary settlement mechanism for R3, who worked with the DTCC to finalize Project Ion in 2022. They need that in a position where they can use it. So expecting a BlackRock ETF sometime. You guys always want the predictions and you want timeframes on stuff, so I'm going to give you one. I expect a BlackRock ETF for XRP Q2 of 2026. So, like I said, they've got to have it in place before July, before they tokenize stocks, in my opinion. Trying to think if there was any other news. Again, with the event and everything, I hadn't had much time to get on Twitter to see what else transpired throughout the day, but those were the big things this morning. And again, everything aligning here for 2026 to be a very good year for XRP. All right. Looks like we got the normal crew on here at this point. So we'll go ahead and jump into the questions. Again, appreciate everybody taking time out of their Monday to come hang out with me and ask great questions. Clicking the wrong buttons here. All right. This person sent over super chat. My wife emailed it to me. It says, guess my super chat disappeared. What was it? All right. It says, Jake, Beyond Work Mastermind, funded LLC, DWP, but I have less than 10,000 XRP. Last February, I decided to be proactive before price appreciation to the LLC and DWP promo. After you stated 90 days to onboard with DWP in anticipation that we'd beat the minimum. Last 90 days ended in May. TikTok advice. You're fine. I appreciate you being proactive. If you don't have enough to onboard and you paid the fees, your account's opened. Should have gone through KYC, AML, all the other stuff at this point. You're just waiting on, the amount of assets that you need to be able to fund your account. And as soon as we see price appreciation, you're going to be in that boat. We're also offering, if we do see price appreciation here in May, 40 bips for anybody that has at least 1.1 million in assets, either Bitcoin or XRP. So, there's been some larger accounts out there that have been like, I don't know, I don't want to move in until you got the yield product. It's going to cost me too much. We're reducing those costs for people. If you do want the peace of mind that institutional custody at Anchorage brings, and the advisory, the ability to borrow against your assets, and ability to participate in the other products that we have. So excited for that. Again, I finally got my team to move on that one. We'll be running that for the whole month of May. So if you do have at least 1.1 million, even after price appreciation, if it were to happen in the not too distant future, we will honor the 40 bips for you when you come over. So excited about that. Excited about the yield products and other things that we're working on. Again, pushing as hard as I can. I think I had a conversation with Prime Broker tonight, and then also a few other counterparties at our event that I'm pretty confident that I'm going to be able to figure something out in the very, very near future, so that people have an opportunity to generate returns on their XRP held there at Anchorage. So excited about that. And again, appreciate the question. And again, if you don't quite meet the minimum yet, then you can just hang out and your account will be ready for you when the time comes. All right, we got Stellar Collections. They say, hey, Jake, I've looked at the Ripple ads and promos. I can find any clock saying $1.40 analog. Can you please help find that? Just give it a Google. I'm going to pull this down here, and then we are going to close that out. I'm going to open up another deal here, and I will share it with you guys. Let's see here. Brad Garlinghouse 2022. That's all I had to Google, and here you go. So I will share my screen with you guys so you can see this, because I know other people probably have this question because you've heard me say it a couple different times. Screen. Yes, I understand. There you go. You guys should be able to see it now. So right here, you can see I just Googled Brad Garlinghouse 2022, and there's a couple different visuals of him with that in the background. So that is the main one that I'm talking about there that pops up first on the Google for $1.40. And again, I don't know if there's a correlation there or not, but sure is interesting that they would have that in the background of a video. And now the price of XRP is hanging out around, you guessed it, $1.40. I don't know. You guys can't see it over here on TikTok. I know this person can only see me. I'm sorry, Jake. But again, if you just want to Google Brad Garlinghouse and spell out the words 2022, you'll be able to pull up that photo very easily. All right. We've got Michael. He says, XRP Jedi needs some hopium after David Schwartz keeps taking the wind out of our sails. I'm a manager at Steve Field's Steakhouse in Plano. Bring the wife. Oh, dude. Yeah, we would love to come out there and see you. You know what? So side tangent, and I will answer your question about David Schwartz. It has been so cool to, I don't want to say like walking billboards, not the deal, but like people that have large amounts of XRP will pick me out in public and walk up and be like, daps, and they're excited, and they obviously hold a significant amount, whatever that means to them. It's kind of like a self-selecting deal, which is wild. But it's super cool to meet people out in public that are aligned with the mission. They understand the opportunity that we have. And if you ever see me out in public, just say hi. I'm a regular dude, just like anybody else. While I was in Vegas, and I think I said this last time, but the security guard, like I'm walking by, and he's like, Mr. Claver. And I'm like, oh, I don't know if they know me at the hotel or what. And so he pulls me over, and he's got like the XRP chart, like watching it while he's running security there at the casino. So just, super cool to see, people out there that know what's going on. And would love to come out there to Steve Field's Steakhouse. It sounds like a nice steakhouse. If you've been to Texas, if you haven't been to Texas, if you go to Texas, steakhouses, barbecue, Tex-Mex, like that is what we are good at. And that's what's delicious there in Dallas for the most part. There's other, Thai restaurants and other things as well, but not going to be as good. Those are kind of the three mainstays if you're going to go to Texas. This person says you're delusional. I'll take that. I'll take delusional. Um, that or lunatic are my preferred adjectives. It's only delusional till it works. So um, I will take that as an adjective that describes me if you'd like to share it. All right, back to the question at hand. All right, so he talks about David Schwartz, taking wind out of everybody's sails. And a lot of people have asked me to address this. I've talked about it in the mastermind a couple times, but I'll go ahead and address it here. So David sold his Ethereum at $1. And he actually came out today or yesterday and explained why he did that. David calculates probabilities. If you guys have ever read the book Outliers, I would encourage you to do it if you haven't. It really talks about, the circumstances under which people become billionaires. There's only 3,000-ish billionaires in the world today. There's 8 billion people. So what's the probability that you're going to become a billionaire? Not very high, right? And David thinks in probabilities. He thought that there was a 1% chance, and he even said this in a tweet, that Ethereum would go to $2,000. Like that wasn't even on his radar or in his thought process at the time. And it had dropped as low as 70 cents. So when it got back to $1, he thought, okay, well, I'll take profit here. I think he said he took profit at like $1.04. And before he knew it, it went up to $12. And he didn't buy back in because he was like, well, it's going to come back down. It's not going to go that high, right? And it kept going. And, the solar panels that he put on his roof are probably the most expensive solar panels that anybody has ever bought at this point, because he sold the Ethereum, the opportunity cost on Ethereum to buy the solar panels to put them on his house. And he even talked about Arthur Britto. So, at one point, David also owned 26 million XRP. He admits that he has sold some of that off over a period of time in order to be able to fund his lifestyle and do other stuff. He talks about Arthur Britto, and he said, a couple of years ago, he was talking to Arthur. He was selling off his Bitcoin to fund his lifestyle and do other things, but he hadn't sold any XRP at that point. I can tell you many of the other employees at Ripple get paid in XRP, and many of them do not sell their XRP. They take a portion of their paycheck. They take that portion in XRP every single paycheck. They do not sell it. They live off of the other revenue or the other fiat that they're getting paid. To each their own, right? And again, if you're looking at probabilities, I've already talked about this. The perfect storm has to transpire for XRP to get to 3-4 digits. I think that that's likely based on the current macroeconomic events that are transpiring right now. Now, if you're looking at it probabilistically, I don't know if that's the right word or not, probably adding another syllable in there. But in David's purview, again, probability wise, less than 1% chance. And I would agree with that, to be honest with you. However, if you look at the current macro environment, the scenario where that 1% exists is looking highly probable. Now, for him to say that, just viscerally without including the macro, that's how he comes to the 1% chance. Same thing on Bitcoin. Like he was in early on Bitcoin also. If you're gonna listen for investment advice, I will say there's been a few times where David has looked out for the community. At the top in 2021, when XRP was like $1.96, it was like, in that range. I think it was the high that day. He said, hey, if you have life-changing amounts of crypto on the table, you should probably take profit. And Brad Garlinghouse has talked about, multiple times, be greedy when others are fearful. And he's often called the bottom of the market. So, the other thing I would say about David is if he really did know that this is going to go to significantly higher prices, he would need plausible deniability. He would need, actual written proof that he didn't believe that that was going to be the case. And then he didn't participate in the riddles or any of these other things that are out there that advocated for people to be buying XRP. Because that's insider trading, right? This isn't a security. We know it's not a security, but they may apply those same rules to commodities and other things as well. So, for him and his interest, it makes a lot of sense that he would be making these statements online, visible for other people to read, and have that visceral reaction that is negative, like many people are attributing to them. I don't view them as negative. I view them as, he's leaving chances in there. He says almost always in a couple different tweets that he's put out. If you read between the tea leaves, again, if he's ascribing the same 1% probability, then there's a 99% chance in his mind that it doesn't. Still a 1% chance that it does. And again, kind of going back to the book that I mentioned earlier, outliers are people that are not extremely intelligent. Intelligence doesn't always equate to wealth. So, the most billionaires, if you look at their IQ and you study them, they're somewhere between 130 and 150. They're intelligent, like they're higher than average, but they will take calculated risks. If you are a savant, the most intelligent person in the world, really, I think his IQ is over 200. He's in the book. He's talked about it in the book. He cannot, one, his EQ is not that great, but two, he won't take the risk because he can calculate the risk. Like, who would take a 1% chance? They're not going to. If you're here and you see this opportunity and you understand, the possibility of the upside, and that's what an asymmetric bet is. When you bet against the market and you see something that other people don't, it's not priced in. And he even talked about that in one of his tweets. He said, if there was some very wealthy people and they thought that there was a, chance that this would go substantially higher, they would have already driven the price to $20 per token. That's probably true. I talk to many, many wealthy people. I host dinners. We go to events, talk to family offices. This isn't even on their radar. They have no idea about it. They've stayed far away from it. They're looking at, AI and other companies and other ways to allocate their capital that's inside their domain expertise. Crypto's not something they mess with. And at scale, people that are wealthy, again, are looking to preserve their capital. They want a return of capital, and then they want a return on capital. This person says 150 is pretty much genius. I would agree with that. Elon Musk, I think, is like 154. He's on the higher end of that spectrum. Now, there are people that are billionaires that are not very intelligent at all as far as IQ. They have very high EQ, but they don't have, great IQ. Somewhere between, on the low end, like 110, 120, 130, somewhere in there. My IQ is like 131, 132. I'm not, a genius by any measure. I'm smart enough, right? And so that was the other thing that the book taught me was like, you kind of want to be on, leaning one side on the bell curve on things. You need to be in the right place at the right time with the right domain expertise and have access to the right resources and be willing to take the risk. And that's how you get a situation where you become a billionaire. That's really the only outcome that's ever, the only constraints that have ever transpired to be able to have that outcome for people. So anyway, all that to say, I think David's very intelligent. I think he understands pretty much more than anybody else about the XRPL. I'll share one other instance. So when I went to go talk to him at Consensus in 2020, was it last year? I think it may have been 24. Yeah, it was before the amendments had ever been proposed. Well, it may have been 25. I think it was 25. I talked to him about XLS 64, 65, and 66 with pseudo accounts, borrow, lend, and liquidity pools. And I talked about the ability to be able to basically effectively margin XRP by holding it in your account, reflecting it in the pool, and then using it to participate in the upside. And he was like, well, that's interesting. I hadn't really thought about it that way. And I'm like, you're the guy that built this. Like, this isn't what the banks asked you for, like when you were talking to them, because you guys build product for institutions, right? He's like, well, yeah, they did, but I don't care how they use it. I just want to build the products that they asked me to build or propose the amendments that are going to be in alignment with their objectives. And then however they use it is up to them. right? Like it's not my game. I'm not building financial products or, all this stuff. I just understand how to code it and propose the amendment and make sure that it's would function at scale and not disrupt the ledger, the TPS, and long-term viability of the network. All right. Okay. So again, there are so many different people that play their role in the ledger's ability to be able to, grow at scale. There's other UNL validators. There's, 32 other ones besides Ripple that also propose amendments. So all that being said, I just take everything with a grain of salt. I think David's extremely intelligent, but I'm willing to take the 1% chance because I think I see something that the market doesn't. And with XRP being mispriced in comparison to what it should be priced at based on the volume of transactions and its adoption at scale for institutional application, which Monica Long talked about happening this year, I'm willing to take the 1% chance and continue to allocate to that when other people, may read that and go, well, it's too risky for me. I'm going to de-risk and I'm going to, diversify or do other stuff. Again, it's not for everybody. That's why there's a 1%. That's why there's only 3,000 billionaires. So, all right, jump into the next one here. We've got this person to say, hi, Beyond Orbit Mastermind member since October 25. Very cool. I truly thought you were going to be right on the bet, but still think now is really impossible to deny that everything is lined up that you said. Thank you, man. Everything is finally moving along. Pieces are falling in place. Timing was a little off, but Michael Burry's timing was a little off also. Took a lot longer than he anticipated. We already did that one. I'm going to go all the way to the bottom here and then work my way back up. So if you haven't put a super chat in yet, again, I'm only going to be hanging out for another 30 minutes or so, and then we're going to wrap it up tonight. This person, the brand Sniped, they say, for those that hold less than 1,000 XRP and live check to check, what's the best route to maintain growing wealth for future generations to be well off? Also, any AI or enabled AI enabler stocks you like? Stock market's extremely overvalued right now. Private equity, there's probably still some plays there for private equity on the AI stuff. But I think stock market is significantly overvalued. I would wait for a significant pullback to deploy liquidity, and that's what I'm personally doing. Again, can't tell you what to do. You should speak with a financial advisor. If you want to talk to one that's cool with crypto and they understand this asset class, you should reach out to Digital Wealth Partners. You can go to digitalwealthpartners.net, click the contact us form, and fill it out. And one of our advisors will reach out. They'd love to talk to you about which stocks you might want to invest in alongside your crypto. But living paycheck to paycheck. So what I would say is, and this is true for no matter how much XRP you have or whatever digital asset or whatever investment you've made, the families that have generational wealth, somebody planted seeds for trees that they never planned to sit under. Okay, that sounds like an old Chinese proverb, and I don't mean it to sound that way, but it's a good analogy. You planting seeds that other people will get to enjoy, maybe not even you, right? So you bought 500 XRP, you bought 1,000 XRP. It's going to take a while for that to get to a high enough price where that's a meaningful, like, generational wealth. I consider like more than 20 million or 50 million generational wealth. If you have less than that, it's difficult to live a nice lifestyle yourself and still be able to pass that on, especially if the dollar is going to continue to inflate at the rate that it is. I think that that's going to get shored up. That's a different conversation. But as constraints sit today, future generations are going to need a lot of money in order to be well off or be afforded opportunities. So, to have $20 million, let's say you had 200 XRP, okay? To have, well, my phone's up here to do the math. I think you need $100,000 XRP at $200 or 200 XRP to have 20 million bucks. That's a ways off. like, I hate to say it, but I think 2032, 2032, somewhere in there. So it's not that far in the future, 10 years, somewhere in there for $100,000 XRP. But, I don't know where you're at in your career. You may be older. And so that still may be meaningful for you, and you might be able to use that and participate in that wealth during your lifetime. But it's kind of a set it, forget it, plant the seed, and don't think about it type thing. Put it on a cold storage wallet, hold it, have continuity, have it in your will, have the seed phrases somewhere that your, family can get to it if they need to. But I'll tell you a story that was shared tonight. So Brent over there at Uphold, he's on their enterprise side. He's been working with us to be able to get the app up and everything. He was telling me how he got into crypto, and his brother-in-law, actually it's kind of his cousin-in-law. So it's like his cousin's husband got hacked, and the people that were trying to get his stuff from him wanted Bitcoin. So he reached out to him, and they figured it out. They bought some Bitcoin. This is like 2015. Okay. And they bought more than enough Bitcoin to pay these people whatever they were asking for. And the rest he just kind of forgot about. Look up, 5-6 years later, and that couple grand or $5,000 or however much they put in the Bitcoin worth a couple $100,000, like big returns, that's the way I think about this, right? You're going to throw a little bit of money over here. Really don't think about it. If you've got, 5, 6, 7 figures in XRP, cool. I mean, it's not going to take, I think $100 XRP is going to change a lot of people's lives. $1,000 XRP is going to change a lot more people's lives. But if you're in that bracket that's less than 100,000 or less than 1,000 XRP, it's just going to take longer for you. And I would look at it like, this is a seed I'm planting that I don't ever even plan to sit under in my lifetime for this tree or for it to bear fruit for me. I'm planting it for my kids and my kids' kids and my kids' kids' kids. And that's the way I would view that investment. It would just be on a much longer time horizon. The old nail pounder, good to see you. They say moved from Laughlin to DWP, but I haven't heard back from them. I got registered agent renewal from Laughlin. Should I pay it? Should I contact? So DWP does not do the LLCs. That's going to be Digital Family Office or Digital Ascension Group. You can just just email support at digitalfamilyoffice.io, and they will help you get everything set up through the app so that you don't have to worry about the registered agent fee over there with Laughlin. And as long as you move to our side, then you're good. So support channel, again, support at digitalfamilyoffice.io, and our team there will help you get that situated, my man. Or my lady. Old nail pounder sounds like a dude, though, if I'm going to guess. OMG Tracer says, Jake, do you think Baba Koods actually knows the elites behind the riddles? And when XRP moons, he was chosen to reveal them, interaction with him. I hadn't talked to Baba in a long time. I talked to him a little bit back in 2022. Good dude, Canadian. His dad's done very well in real estate, sharp guy. I do think that, so the riddles and all of that stuff, you guys, you may know what that is, you may not. There's a lot of accounts over there on Twitter that have supposedly, known stuff for a long time. I will say, the domino theory that I put together did take those into account, right? There's definitely breadcrumbs that have been shared by different accounts on what would take place. And that did play into some of my thesis that I put together around that. Now I had to dig more and figure things out and understand the reverse carry trade and how oil was going to impact inflation and interest rates and the macro side of things. But there was definitely some stuff there. As far as Baba knowing the elites, I don't have access to his DMs. I don't know Baba well enough to tell you one way or the other if he did know anybody or does know anybody. My interactions with him were about cars. And that's pretty much the limit that him and I spoke on stuff. So never met him in person, don't know him that well. And I couldn't tell you one way or the other. It was entertaining. I can tell you that, and it's still entertaining to see some of the stuff he puts out there. But again, I take all that stuff with a grain of salt. I look at it. I don't think it's the end all be all. I think that there's a lot of stuff that has to culminate for this to play out. But again, it did play into what I talked about also. So, yeah, the answer is I don't know. Troy says, howdy. Question. Are you inquisitive? Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Also, maybe Schwartz is saying all this purposely to bring attention to how wrong he was before and draw a correlation. That's kind of what I'm reading into it, if you're going to read between the lines on that, Troy. But again, plausible deniability is a good thing. Jen XRP says, Beyond Brook Mastermind, awesome dude, Carbon 2 member, glad to have you. He says, could you help me recover 1,000 XRP that's on Coinbase wrapped and sent to Trezor wallet on Base? How did you wrap it? There's been a lot of sketchy stuff over the years on Coinbase where you have to click I understand that this is a risky type product, blah, blah, blah. If you wrapped it on Base and sent it to your Trezor, I would think you would have to send it back from your Trezor in the same form to a wrapped XRP address on Coinbase to unwrap it. And then you would have the XRP on Coinbase that you could then send to your Trezor as XRP instead of wrapped XRP. I know Binance had wrapped XRP for a long time, and I don't remember who I was talking to. This has been a while back, and the guy was like, hey, I got he told me 500,000 wrapped XRP. And I was like, you need to get the XRP, not the wrapped XRP. And he was like, it's on my cold wallet. And I was like, all right, well, you're going to have to transfer that back to the exchange, unwrap it, and then send it back. And then he ended up doing that, and it worked out for him. So that would be my suggestion. If sounds complicated, if you're a client, I'm sure our advisors might be able to help you. All right. Last Monday, you said the U.S. government can subpoena cold wallet keys. Yes. Does that include Tangem? Anchorage. If the U.S. government is capable of confiscating, stealing our crypto, why would other nations use XRP? So they can't confiscate it. They can't. They can just see it, right? So they can reconstitute the wallet. They can see it there. They can attribute ownership to you. They know that you have access to it. So if you are, doing something illegal, then if it moves from that address, they know that you have access to that wallet. They can attribute it to you. They can't freeze your XRP. They can blacklist you. So that is one feature of the XRPL that does exist that allows people to keep from basically, accepting XRP from a party that they do not want to participate with, but they can't actually forcibly take it from you. But they can get your keys. They could reconstitute your wallet, and they could send it themselves. Anchorage doesn't work like that. There are, algorithmic keys that are generated. That's why we work with them. The accounts are segregated, and there aren't any keys that are available for them to be able to do anything with it. And it's a multi-sig wallet. We would all have to sign off on it in order for them to, and you included, move it from there. So the more governance and friction you can build into stuff, the better off you're going to be. Tangem would be a little bit more difficult because Tangem creates the cards. I would expect that Tangem would have all those on file somewhere. Even if you never see the keys, they're an NFC chip. Tangem would be more difficult versus a Ledger or some of the other cold wallets that are out there. And again, anything that's onshore is going to be more susceptible to that. Things that are offshore, they're going to have a harder time with. We recommend Decent. They're in South Korea, which is an ally of the U.S., right? But I don't think you want to use a cold wallet from North Korea or Russia or Iran. So I don't know. Look, there's always some risk in any investment or anything you're going to participate in. Don't be a bad actor. How about that? Don't sell drugs. Don't be doing sketchy stuff or defrauding people or rugging people or doing any of that stuff that you know you shouldn't be doing. If you're not doing any of those things, I wouldn't worry about it. Is my 2 cents. If you are a citizen contributing value to society and you're paying your taxes and you're doing all the stuff you're supposed to do, you're probably not going to have any issues. And if you don't want to be that type of person, and not necessarily that you want to be malicious and hurt other people, you should have additional safeguards. We set up trusts and things where we can get assets offshore, and the countersigners on that trust would have to sign on that wallet in order to remove it, and they're not going to do that because the U.S. doesn't have purview or authority in the Cook Islands or some of the other places we structure things. So if you're that concerned about it, that would be the way that I would go about it. I would have a multi-sig wallet at an institutional custodian where your trustee or one of the countersigners on that was in a jurisdiction where the U.S. government couldn't manipulate it. But again, I don't think people need to really worry about that personally, unless you are a bad actor. T. Monroe says, just wanted to say thank you for Vegas. Great event. Awesome. Good vibes, great people, and awesome experience all around. Greatly appreciate you and your team and all that you built for Project. Let's go. I'm glad to have seen you there. I appreciate you coming out for it. We enjoyed putting it on. We had about 300 people come through from the mastermind there in Vegas at the Palm. We were at the Ghost Bar last Wednesday. So really enjoyed that. Got to see, many of the same faces, but also many new faces as well. And yeah, it was a really good time. So thank you for the kind words and coming out. KW says, Jake already set up with DWP and DAG with my LLC and Robert Mastermind member. Any help from us for New York who are not able to set up with Uphold? We are working on that. We're subject to their licenses. Currently, we would have to get a bit license ourselves, or they would have to get a bit license. Working on, or I think they're working on. So, Simon, their CEO, just moved to New York. I don't know why they would be officing there, which they do have an office there, if they weren't intending to be able to operate out of that region at some point in the future. Same thing with Canada, working on both those things. So again, appreciate your patience. If you are with DWP, we can serve those in New York. That's not a problem. And your LLC will still be managed through the app. It's just the trading functionality and the bank account that would be a little more difficult. Actually, I think bank account you can still do. So you should be able to do bank account. It's just the trading functionality that would be a problem. And I'm going to talk to my team about that. That's actually really good. So this is like, I don't know if you guys ever do this, like you talk through something with somebody and you have an epiphany and you're like, that's a good way to do it. So I'll follow up with our team and see if we can't at least just get bank accounts for everybody, irrespective of the bit license and the trading crypto component there with Uphold in the app. Revenue Play, thank you for the super chat. I don't see a question, but I appreciate the support and super chat. Mario, it's a Mario. He says, top 3 XRP holder and just started pursuing my business degree online while working. And I found Microsoft's SCORE program for recent grads entering MS cloud supply chain jobs, good op experience, and total comp around 150K. That sounds great, dude. So this is an interesting statistic. A lot of people thought that, coders and developers would be replaced by AI. I actually succumbed to that myself. I was at Bitcoin Vegas last week and speaking with the family office, and they've done a market survey, and the demand for coders and computer science is actually going up, even with the advent of AI. They don't have enough engineers and coders. So if you're working on supply chain jobs and cloud compute, I think that you're going to be in a really, really good spot. And if you can augment your output with AI, I think you're going to be in an even better spot. So kudos to you for the amount of XRP that you've got and can, keep doing a good job. DFW Mike, my man, he says, what's up, boss? Sophia and I were lucky enough to sit around Honest Legend this last weekend for a while. We magnified our wealth, Awesome content to assist with the LLC and 401k options for exponential growth. Thanks for everything. Stay safe. Appreciate it, dude. Thank you for going to that event. Again, split ways with Laughlin, but wish them well in everything that they do. Jayhawk Nation, Rock Chalk Jayhawk, what's up, man? So I hold about 5,000 XRP in a decent wallet for my best friend stationed in Japan. Can I give him the cold wallet so he can transfer it to Uphold and start an LLC when he's here in Q3? Thanks for all that you do. Yep. Yeah, as long as it's segregated on a cold wallet and you sent it there, separate of the stuff that you have, that can count as a gift. Or if he sent you the money and you bought it for him, or however that happened, as long as he's got that in his hands, when he wants to go set up everything, he's more than welcome to do that. Forged Titan. He says, hey, Jake, at 1K XRP, Ripple becomes the richest entity in history. Would the U.S. government let a private company's balance sheet exceed national GDP? Again, the Clarity Act requires that they drop that down to 20%. No one company can hold more than 20% of the supply of a token. So even, at $1,000 XRP, that'd be 2 trillion. It's pretty substantial. But yeah, I think there's going to be a bunch of companies holding significant amounts of XRP on their balance sheet when this all plays out, and the U.S. government as well, along with the IMF and the BIS and other people. So, and I don't know that they would be the richest entity in history. If you want to look up the first ever publicly traded company was the East India Exchange Company. In dollar denominated, relative value, I guess is the word I'm looking for. I'm pretty confident that they would have still been the largest or richest entity that's ever existed, even with Ripple at 20% of XRP holdings at $1,000 a piece. I could be wrong about that, but I would. Is East India? I don't remember. Anyway, watched a YouTube video about it a while back. Pretty sure it's East India Trading Company. Michael, my man. He says, hey, Jake, nice meeting you in Miami at the Mastermind meetup in Vegas. Appreciate all the insights and how you move with God-given purpose every day. Let's get the hangar filled for you and your team. Quick thoughts on the recent compromise between banks and exchanges. I think they need to. I think they need to compromise so that we can get regulation out to be able to stabilize the bond market when all this unwinds. And shout out to Michael. If you need a jet, Apollo Jets seems like an awesome place to work with for charter and your ability to get your own jet on the other side of price appreciation. We've got Mr. Supadive 777. He says, good evening, Jake. I appreciate all that you do. I have my own Wyoming LLC with my own operating agreement. Can I use my own operating agreement and use Digital Ascension Group for my trust? Yeah, I don't see why not. We can set up the trust for you. We can do one there in Wyoming if you would like to do that. It sounds like you reside there is my guess. If you don't, though, that's okay. Either way, we can set up the trust for you, and you can assign the assets from that LLC to the trust, and you'll be good to go. Dragon Lord, he says, just want to say thank you. Seen so much FUD lately, and you and the mods help me stay level-headed. Awesome, dude. Well, we appreciate you being part of the mastermind. And again, if you want to join the mastermind, I haven't even talked about it tonight, we would love to work with you. All you got to do is go over there to beyondbroke.com and go and use the code beyondbroke, all capitalized, the number 1, and then MO, like Mary Oscar, gets you the first month for $2 there in the group. If you need an LLC like the other gentleman and you want to work with us on that, you can just go to app.digitalascensiongroup.com. And once you're there, it's $1,500 for the LLC now. So, no discount code or any of that stuff anymore. It's actually lower than what it was with the discount code before because we're no longer working with Laughlin. We no longer have that additional cost, and we pass that on to our clients, the savings that we've been able to garner. So we'd love to work with you on the LLC side. If you don't have one, if you've got at least $50,000 to $80,000 in total digital asset portfolio, it's probably a good time to start thinking about that. You can reach out to our advisors. and let them know, the questions that you have around it, and they can help walk you through the process if you need a hand to hold through that. So again, app.digitalascensiongroup.com, and you'll be set to manage your wealth over the long term. Sam says, on my 3 a.m. break, keep up the good work. Appreciate you, dude. Excited for all the things that are coming our way, and appreciate the support. Mr. Shook, he says, great seeing you last week. Ready to plan the next meetup. I hope the weekend events went well. Keep up the good work. I hope that 4-letter word that we don't speak about takes a turn for the better in the very near future. Blessings. I am working on the yield product, Mr. Shook, as hard as I possibly can. Believe me, I am going to get something across the line for you guys. You got Kif Abbott. They say, hey, Jake, appreciate you and your knowledge. I'm new. Would you get a specific trust to meet your needs? 14 pages, or use a company that has built a lifetime scalable trust? I could keep up for my lifetime 176 pages. Longer isn't always better on trust stuff. A lot of times they just add additional fluff in there for really no reason. Most of the trusts that I've seen that are well written and meet the needs of our clients are somewhere between 60 and 100 pages. 14 pages probably is not enough unless it's a revocable living trust. If you get something from Trust and Will like we provide, that's on the cheaper end, that's economical for most people, and does cover most of the bases. It's not bespoke to you. It's a kind of a templated version. We do have the assignment of the assets that has the specific language around digital assets and allows you to move that into a revocable living trust. Depending on if it's a revocable trust or an irrevocable trust, you probably have a pretty substantial difference in the amount of pages that it is. A revocable trust is going to be shorter. An irrevocable trust is going to be longer. And again, most of the stuff that we draft is somewhere between 60 and 100 pages for the majority of our clients. Sometimes as low as 50. But, anyway. Great question, though, because I think a lot of people are starting to come around to looking at getting a trust and seeing if that's something they want to set up and thinking through that. And I don't think a lot of people even realize, it's contract law, and you probably want something that's a little more verbose or extensive to make sure that it meets all the needs, but still dynamic enough to be able to last multiple generations. We set up our stuff there in Wyoming because you can do 1,000-year trust in Wyoming. Other people do 500-year trusts. There's some good ones out there on that side. So just depends on who you work with, and you want to make sure that they do understand crypto when they're structuring that. William, he says, what do you think about the contradictory statements that David Schwartz made? I answered that one already, and again, appreciate the super chat. And I think we got through all of the chats that I'm going to be able to get through tonight. Again, I got to run downstairs and grab me some food. So wish you all a wonderful week. We will see you guys again Wednesday night on the live. If you want help on the LLC side, again, just go to app.digitalascensiongroup.com. And our team there will be able to help you get the LLC set up, just $1,500. And then on the wealth management side, you can go over to digitalwealthpartners.net and use the contact us form. And last but not least, if you do want to join the mastermind, we would love to have you on the other side of price appreciation. We're going to lock it down. So you can go to beyondbroke.com and use the code beyondbroke, all capitalized, the number 1. And then MO gets you the first month for $2 month to month, no contract. Check it out. If you don't like it, cancel at any time. Still about 17,000 people there in the group. So if that tells you anything about the value that's provided. With that, we're going to wrap it. I hope you guys have a wonderful night, a wonderful week, and we will see you on the next one.